What country in its right mind would want to leave the world's largest trading bloc and risk financial ruin by going it alone without a deal? What country attempting to hold together a union of disparate political entities would risk that union when many of its inhabitants do not support the breakup in the first place? What country's leaders would be prepared to take a reckless leap into the unknown in the illusory hope of a brighter, more prosperous future, free from outside interference? The answer, of course, is the United States of America in 1776. They must have been insane. I know that there's lots of people here who've been campaigning and voting for this for years and years, if not decades. Thank you all for your patriotism, for your determination to believe in your country and to make sure that it is free again. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we will be free at last, because we will never give up. We will never give up this struggle. They think that they can beat us with 3 years of silly propaganda. We've heard about meteor strikes. We've heard about an epidemic of super gonorrhea. Luckily, most of us have already had that. We're over it, so we've nothing to fear from that. But we were told lots of other things that we ought to fear would be coming too, and they haven't come. We haven't had a punishment budget. We haven't had a property crash or an economic crash of any kind. This country is doing well because we can stand on our own 2 feet. We're the 5th biggest economy in the world. We've got nothing to fear at all. In 1940, this country stood alone against Nazism. We stood alone against an imperial project I was going to say the European Union. In Europe, it amounts to the same thing. In 1942, some Nazi economists put together a scheme called the Europäische Wirtschaftsgemeinschaft. Many of you probably know about it. That translates from German as a European economic community. And in fact, some of the founders of the European Union were ex-Nazis, continuing a project that was dreamt up during the Second World War to build a Napoleonic Carolingian empire in Europe. We don't want that. We stand apart from it. This country has unparalleled access to the seas and the oceans. We've always been an outward-looking country, trading with the world. We built the modern trading world, and the 85% of the world that is outside the European Union has been growing at an unprecedented rate over the last 40 years. Unfortunately, we have missed out on much of that growth. But we don't need to in the future. If we leave and become an independent nation, we can participate much more thoroughly in that growth. We can get outside the common external tariff and access world goods, and we can sell the things that we make in this country and the services which we provide, which are unparalleled. We're in London, the world's #1 finance centre. We offer something to the EU that it cannot get elsewhere. What do we get from the EU that we can't get elsewhere? Well, almost nothing. It's my belief that if we are allowed to leave, we're going to see the price of French wine reduce. Why? Because they'll have to compete with the wonderful wines that we already buy from all over the world on the world trade terms that we already have with the rest of the world. We already export to many, many countries all over the world on those terms very successfully. So we have nothing to fear. The EU itself is a signatory to the World Trade Organization terms, so we'll be able to continue trading with the EU on those terms as well. They call it no deal. That's neuro-linguistic programming. They have deliberately chosen a phrase that makes it sound something negative. They dreamt that up a year after the referendum. It took them that long to come up with a phrase that they thought was negative enough for the freedom that we all know Brexit really stands for. It's not no deal. It's hundreds and hundreds of deals. It's a fantastic future to look forward to. So keep campaigning, keep the fight going, never give up. And remember, I know that many of you will have been at the various counts across the country on the 23rd and 24th of June 2016, and you will have gradually got more and more hopeful as you saw the Sunderland result come in and realised that the prediction that a more than 60% vote in Sunderland would mean that we would win. And we did win. Forget the 48%. The 52% have been ignored for 40 years. And our Tory government and Tories generally keep going on about, oh, we have to find a middle ground. Sorry, for 40 years we didn't have a middle ground. Where was the middle ground in 1973 and 1975? It was ignored completely. Nobody cared about the people who voted against joining this anti-democratic empire. Nobody cared back then. So now I say to the 48% who voted to continue as part of that terrible, terrible anti-democratic system, goodbye. You had your chance. You lost. I'm not interested in what you think. We won, and what we want must be delivered by our Parliament. We've got to keep fighting for it, keep voting for it. I urge you all to campaign in this upcoming general election to ensure that your constituencies get an MP that genuinely supports Brexit, really leaving the European Union. They call it no deal. It's not no deal. It's hundreds of deals. So vote for trade freedom. Vote for world free trade. Vote to take part in it strongly as we can as a country, and look forward to a prosperous and bright future. And if we do leave, we will see a Brexit boom. And that Brexit boom will be an example to all of the countries in the EU, many of whom are struggling because of the terrible centralized Soviet-style system of government and the hopeless currency that fails to reflect the true value of European nation member state economies. I want to tell you about Opinion 2/13. In 2014, the EU had a court case. The court case was to decide whether the EU itself was bound by the European Court of Human Rights. Each member state is required, when joining the European Council, to submit to and to be subordinate to the European Court of Human Rights. But the EU argued successfully in court that the EU itself was not subordinate to those courts, that the EU, and the reason that was given was that the EU should not sacrifice its sovereignty, the very same sovereignty that the EU demanded the member states sacrifice. It is appallingly hypocritical. It tells you the true nature of the European Union. We're told, oh, it's a family of nations. The countries haven't sacrificed, given up their sovereignty. That's a lie. We have been forced to give up sovereignty. Edward Heath knew that we were doing that when he argued for joining the European Economic Community. The Foreign and Commonwealth Office had said to him, this will mean giving up sovereignty, but don't tell anyone because people won't like it. So he lied, and he said there will be no essential loss of sovereignty. It was a terrible lie, and I'm afraid that the furtive, Heathish traitors in our Parliament, the Tories, are continuing with this lie, pretending that somehow we can be in this empire and still be some sort of independent nation. It's a lie. They have rejected 0 of the laws and directives passed to us by the European Union. The European Union Parliament has proposed 0 of the laws that have been passed to us and rubber-stamped. And the European Commission, the commissioners themselves, each has received 0 votes from the people of Europe. It is a cargo cult democracy. It's designed to look like a democracy, but it isn't one. All of those zeros amount to 0 control over what the European Union stands for and does as a government. We've rejected it. Go on rejecting it. Never change your minds. Speak to people you know at work. Speak to people in the pub. Get online, make the case whenever you can for leaving the EU, and we will lead the way and other countries will follow when we do leave. That is a great future. Keep fighting for it. I'm very proud to be standing with you here today, campaigning and shouting for that bright future. Thank you very much for your time.